Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. In this video, quick recap of a basic study technique that I've used for a long time now and works really well with your NASM textbook. Now, keep in mind, the goal when you're studying for a certification exam like NASM's, look, if you want to read through the textbook, that's a big textbook. I mean, if you want to read it word for word, that's up to you. Absolutely. However, there's some really nifty tips that I can give you, and this is one of them for not having to read through the entire book, but kind of focus in on those areas that we know are going to be on their exam, or at least in a general sense. And the way you want to do it with the NASM textbook is not read the entire textbook. Again, as I said, unless you want to, but the technique here is a 3-4 step process of getting through all 23 chapters of the textbook in a very compressed, very short period of time. Now, remember, this doesn't mean that you're not studying. There's always a lot of work that goes into studying, i.e., memorization. Remember, whenever you hear the word, well, I'm going to study this, I'm going to study that, substitute it, especially in situations like this academically, substitute that word I'm going to study with, I'm going to learn, I'm going to memorize, right? So memorization, that's the key, the ability to um, consume information in the form of written book, right, videos, whatever the case is, consume that material and hold it in your sort of mid to longer term memory, right? So you got like a working memory component to your brain. Everybody's different in this and how long and how much they can retain. But memory itself is pretty much straightforward. You look at stuff, you hear stuff. It goes into like this short term, we used to call it short term memory. It's technically like a working memory where you can retrieve it for a couple of seconds, maybe a minute even. And the more input, the less time you can hold it in this working memory, so to speak. So if you want to get this stuff into your sort of mid or longer term memory, right, days and weeks and months, there's a couple of things you got to do. One of them, of course, is repetition. So when you're dealing with just terminology, if you want to memorize words or terms, there's many different techniques, and I've used a lot of them over the years. But in the case specifically with NASM, I want to show you how to use, and it's basically a review on how to use their textbook, which they did a great job, by the way. At least the editors, the publishers did a really good job of formatting it in a way that lets you go through this 3, maybe 4 step process, right? And so the first step in this technique is to any chapter that you're ready to study. And we can start with chapter 1, okay, if you want to do that. I'll just jump into let's look at chapter 8. It doesn't matter because every chapter is basically the same. And the methodology here, the strategy is to use what NASM has given you, which is at the very end of the chapter. So no matter what chapter I'm in, right? You've gone through all these different chapters. You're at chapter 8. Don't start at the front of the chapter. Go to the end of the chapter. This has worked really well. So the first thing I do is I get to I'm going to go to the end of chapter 8. Let's see. Chapter 8 is on page 200 and in the 7th edition, 245. Now, this is the first step, okay? They give you a summary, which in this case, chapter 8 is about like 2 paragraphs. And then there's a chapter review, okay? And then this is going to be the first step, the chapter highlights. So step number 1 is read. And again, however you personally like to study is your business. I'm giving you a basic general strategy here that works for most folks. If you want to read the summary and take a couple of notes, I'm not going to say no to that, but it's not necessary, right? So the first thing, step 1 is read the summary. Step 2, in this case, or I can say 1A and step 1B. I got to think about that now. Read the chapter review. Now, again, in this case, the chapter review it takes up almost the entire page and a little bit of page top of 246. So read it, okay? Peruse through it. Don't have to take notes. Did you hear what I said? You don't have to take notes on the chapter review. you'll be taking notes right when you go to the beginning of the chapter. So you get this step one, 1A, read the summary, step 1B, I guess. Read the chapter review. You're basically getting your brain sort of warmed up in a sense. And it's relatively short. Read the chapter review. And then the final step, which is where the work comes in, is going to the chapter highlights. Now, when you get to your chapter highlights, this is where you're going to need a pen and paper to rewrite the chapter highlights. Okay, so the methodology for sort of summarizing, or I like to use the word compress, squeezing down and compressing a sentence, multiple sentences, or paragraphs is what's known as the irreducible minimum, right? Irreducible minimum method. Basically, what you're doing is you're trying to remove as much extraneous information, in this case, words, remove as much of that as possible, and you're left with a couple of words, in this case, from these bullet points, okay, a couple of words that will satisfactorily, that will give you all the information you need to understand what the full bullet point says. In other words, the bullet points in the back of each of these chapters is roughly a sentence, sometimes two sentences. So you're looking at approximately 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. You're looking at anywhere between 15 to 30 words in a sentence. I hope this makes sense. And so anytime you're looking to memorize, you're for the most part trying to create connections and minimize the total amount of words, right, that you've got to get into your brain. So in other words, if I was to say, as an example, memorize this sentence. Joe and Mary and Bob and Bill all went to the store, and as they were walking to the store, they saw a red dog that was sitting by the side of the street, and then they passed by 5 cars, and then they got to the store. If I asked you to memorize that sentence, you'd be like, come on, this is not going to happen. However, if I said to you, what's the main gist of that sentence that I read to you? Okay. Now, what you can do is compress that down. You would start removing words from that sentence, and you would be left with whatever the names were. I don't even remember the names. Joe and Mary went to the store, saw a dog, saw a car, something like that. So you're at 5 words. But what was the gist? The main gist of that sentence was they went to the store and they saw some things on the way, or something like that. So if I was to compress it down and try and memorize that Joe and Mary, that I think that's what their names, Joe and Mary went to the store, that's the gist of the sentence. That's a lot easier to remember just from memorization perspective. It's a lot easier to remember than the 20 words that made up the entire sentence. Well, that's what a bullet point is doing for you. Keep in mind, bullet points themselves are summarizations of paragraphs and even pages. Okay, remember, you've got an entire chapter of, I don't know how many pages are in here. And what NASM did for you, thank you, is they summarized a lot of that information into bullet points. All you're doing is now doing the same thing, but you're summarizing the bullet point using what's known as the irreducible minimum technique. So there's a lot of words in these sentences that are just not necessary to get the main gist or the main meaning of the bullet point. Okay, so let me give you an example. And by the way, there's lots of bullet points in here. So the first bullet point on page 246 says the human body needs a constant supply of energy to function properly and meet the demands of exercise. By the way, it's a skill actually to figure out how to do this. So let me just kind of give you an idea. Follow along with me, open your book and follow along with me for a second. Now, I'm not going to cross them out, but I'm going to kind of knock out some words right from the very get-go that are they're adjectives or they are adverbs, something that's, remember, adjectives and adverbs, they modify, adjectives modify nouns, adverbs modify verbs. Okay. So for the most part, from a memorization standpoint, in general, I don't need adverbs and I don't need adjectives, right? All I need to remember, I don't need to remember the human body. What do I need to remember? The body. I'm in a personal training certification course. It's not like I'm going to confuse the animal, right? It's the human body, but I don't need the word human. You get, I hope that makes sense. This technique is allowing you to memorize that bullet point easier by simply eliminating words that are, in some sense, extraneous and unnecessary. Because remember, when you memorize this information, all you're doing when you take an exam, when you look at an exam question, is you're getting a sort of remembering just the main gist of that information, right? You're triggering a memory. That's what you're trying to do in this technique, is so that when you see a question that says something about, the main point of blah, blah, blah is 1, 2, 3, and 4, it triggers a memory from this particular, in this case, this particular bullet point, for instance. So that's the general gist of the technique. It's very quick and it's very efficient, and that's why we do it. You can add other memorization techniques to it. You can, make modifications to it, but the human body needs a constant supply of energy, right? So the body needs, and you can do this over a couple of pass-throughs. So I get rid of the word human. I don't really need constant supply. So what I'm going to do is I'm already saying the body needs energy to function properly. I don't need the word properly. I mean, honestly, I don't. I mean, I already know that functioning properly is part of the point of this. So I'm already removing words and meet the demands of exercise. Okay. So now you can basically eliminate me personally. I remove that entire last part and meet the demands of exercise. I don't need those words in there. This bullet point is basically saying the body needs energy to function. Now, I've compressed it down to 3 or 4 words. That's what I'm going to write on my notepad. I hope that makes sense. Do you get the technique? Some of you will have a struggle with this because you'll think that every word is important, and I do get that. Here's what I would like you to do. Give it a shot. Don't worry if you cut out too many words. Do one pass through and remove a couple of words and say it over in your head. Okay? And then do another pass through and see if you can get rid of some words. Now, because I've done this for so long, I basically have, these bullet points down to a T where I can basically say the body needs energy. Okay? Body needs energy. For the most part, I don't even need the end of that. Function properly, meet demands of exercise. That's assumed. Once I remember that the body needs energy, that's enough. I already know that the body needs energy for everything that we do, not just to function properly and for exercise, but to feel well and to think and to breathe, right? We need all of these things. And so I hope that makes sense. So I'm giving you my particular way that I do it. You might want to leave in the word function, right? Just in case. So does that make sense? So the first one here is easy. I cut it down to the body needs energy. 4 words. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. I could probably take out the word the because my mind will put that word in there automatically. How about the second one? The energy molecule used to do cellular work is called adenosine triphosphate, ATP, and it is made from food substrates consumed in the diet. Okay, this is the way I do it. The energy molecule used to do cellular work is called ATP. So this is what I do. I like to use symbols. I like to use equal signs. I like to use up arrows, down arrows, right? Different symbols to put in place of a word. ATP equals, and this is the way I would do it, ATP equals cellular work, something like that, maybe. Made from, and it is, you don't need that, made from food substrates consumed in a diet. I don't need substrates consumed in the diet in my summary. Food. ATP equals energy from food. From a memorization standpoint, that's all I need. Remember, this is not the end all. This is just like the first part of this. So you can make it through. Okay, so those are the first two. Give it a try on the third one. And by the way, when you're responding back in the comment section, please let us know if this is helpful. You may even want to, you're more than welcome to let us know what you did, right, in your elimination of words to get to a particular compressed version of it, right? Irreducible minimum. Let us know. Put it in the comment box. Hey, Doug, this is what I did with one of these. I compressed it down to these number of words. It seems to work. Or this is I tried this. How does that sound? You're more than welcome to do that in the comment section. So that's step one. Now, so that's probably the most challenging part of doing this, I would think. But I mean, my hat's off to NASM for doing it this way, because this is one of the best ways. Anytime you can take information, an entire, let me see where chapter 8 starts. So here's chapter 8. Chapter 8 can be a monster. Okay. It could have, I mean, there's a lot of information. It's not that bad, but there's a lot of information in there. Now, what I want you to do, so basically what you're doing is you're compressing. Instead of reading the entire chapter, you're going back here. Does it get that? Second step now is to go and now come to the front of the chapter. Now, instead of reading, you're just looking for a couple of things. Step 2 is now look for pictures, look for tables, look for charts, look for figures. Anything that's not the written word, right? Seems counterintuitive, but that's the reality of how you can get through this pretty quick. And your goal is to look at the figures, look at the tables, and for the most part, your job will be to memorize, meaning you got to take the table or the chart, use the irreducible minimum concept, and compress down extraneous wordy sentences and paragraphs into usable 2 to 3 or 4 word components and rewrite those. Okay, so that's step 2. Now you're looking, and I'm just going through figure 8.1, for instance, basic overview of energy metabolism. If it's me, I'm literally drawing that picture and rewriting exactly what they wrote on there. Because I got a visual component to my learning style. I really like to look at things and redraw things and write them in my own words if I need to. So that's step 2, is now you're looking. Every chapter you're looking for, well, there's nothing there, nothing there. It's all written words, nothing. Oh, there you go. Energy systems. Here's a picture, figure 8.2, ATP conversion to ADP. Spend a little bit of time redrawing that. Well, as best you can. I mean, looks like a fairly difficult drawing, but look at it and redraw it. Keep going. Uh-oh, figure 8.3. See what I'm doing? I've already made it 4, 5, 6 pages, and now I'm redrawing and I'm rewriting that. Okay, glycolysis. Okay, I'm rewriting that. You see all these pictures they have. Thanks, NASM, for giving us pictures. I appreciate it. And now all I'm doing is looking at all these figures. Oh, got to a table, 8.1. Characteristics of the 3 energy systems. Memorize the tables. How do you memorize tables? You rewrite them. Yes, literally, piece of paper, draw the boxes just like they have it, and literally transpose what they have onto a sheet of paper and do that. And you'll start to actually memorize. Believe it or not, it will really help you in the memorization process. That's the second way to do this, right? You're scouring through. The third way is to look, the third step, I should say, is if you see any bullet points or numbered areas in the text, you will hone in on those, because what they're doing is they're giving you a summary once again. So if it is the written word, you're not reading it. You don't have to, right? When you do get to the stretch your knowledge boxes, of course, I would read those. But the point is that number 1, chapter highlights. Number 2, figures, charts, pictures, tables, yada, yada. Number 3 is look for the and it's not, by the way, that part of it is not in any order if you don't want, but look for bullet points and then rewrite those. I'll give you an example, page 230, ketone bodies. Now, I don't read any of that text. I go right to the numbers. See, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ketone levels can increase in the body in several ways. I write that down. Ketones, several ways increase. Number one, by restricting overall calories to very low levels. Calorie restriction, very low. Calorie restriction, very low. Calorie restriction, low, if you wanted to say it like that. That's the first one. See how I'm rewriting this? Everything I'm doing, for the most part, is when I can, I am compressing using the irreducible minimum method, and I am compressing sentences and bullet points and number lists down to as few words as possible as I can get it while still maintaining the general overall meaning of the sentence. And that's all I'm doing. There's a helpful hint box here, for instance. Now, the last thing I recommend you do, and again, it's not in any order, it's just last on this list in this video. Look what NASM gave you. Look at all those definitions on the sidebars. They're giving you literally words and terms that you need to memorize. They've done it for you. Boom. That's why I don't need to read the textbook. One of the reasons is they've summarized everything for you already. So basically, NASM has made it easy for you to memorize and to summarize. They gave you the summaries to memorize and compress information, right, as you need to learn, memorize. See, learn, memorize. They're the same thing within the context of studying, learning, studying, memorizing, to pass their exams. So you'll notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 words or terms on the side panels. Go right to those. You can do that first if you wanted to. Use Quizlet. Okay, go into Quizlet and make Quizlet study cards with this, or write them down on a sheet of paper. Remember, every time you rewrite something, it helps get into that gray matter. And there's lots of words and terms, and yes, but one single pass through, maybe 2 pass through, will take you much less time than reading the material. Now, by the way, if you are I think it's 0.01% of the population that has a true photographic memory, disregard everything I just said and just read the textbook. The point is that you will get through these chapters pretty quick, okay? And if you need to, redo it, it still takes less time to go through this method, right? Chapter summary review, chapter highlights. Go to the front of the chapter, look at your sidebar, definitions, internal figures, internal charts, internal tables, internal pictures, yada, yada. Reviewing those, and then internal bullet points or numbered numbers, right? So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And using those, like I said, the sidebar definitions, that's what they want you to know and memorize. Yes, I know you think it's a lot, and it is a lot. However, your brain can very easily, right, with some hard work, hard work, it's probably contradictory, but you could probably very easily get through this within a relatively short period of time. Try using this technique and this method. Let me know how it works for you by commenting in the comment box below, and give us some ideas on how you do your studying, by the way. If you have a different technique, let us know, and let the other students know that are studying and trying to pass their NASM exam. As always, if you would, please subscribe to the channel. You can share it. I think you're supposed to click on the bell or something, right? So you can get the notifications that come in, and like it, by the way, if you would, if you like it. If you don't like it, then unlike, whatever that is. Just let us know how we can be of assistance. As always, it's a pleasure bringing you this information, and have a great week, and we'll see you next week.